Hey everybody, welcome back to Men Need to Be Heard. It's Dan, and today I have a topic that so many of my followers have requested that I cover. A while back, I had reached out to some legal friends of mine, and one of them, my good friend David Pizarro, had said, "You need to speak to this woman. She is the God," if I remember the word he used, when it comes to the particular topic that we're talking about, which is prenups or prenuptial agreements, the full term in. And one of the things that I have found, there's a lot of misconceptions about them, good and bad. And I thought it would be a great opportunity to bring an expert on to discuss what they are, why you need them or might not need them, and all that. So without any further ado, let me introduce my guest. Let me bring her up. Her name is Kelly Chang Rickert. Hello, Kelly. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Dan. How are you?
I am fantastic. Hope you're doing well as well. So, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and just kind of introduce yourself to the audience?
Yes. So I have been a divorce attorney now for 25 years, and I retired because I don't think that that's the right thing to do. I am a Christian lawyer, and I just want to say nobody is the God of anything. So I'm definitely not the God of prenups. I recommend that you select a good spouse, a godly spouse, and then, you should protect your assets from creditors and from, evil people, but your spouse is not an evil person. And if your spouse is evil, you shouldn't be marrying them. So, that being said, I am now a professor of law. I don't do contested, litigated, nasty divorces anymore because those are horrible to the soul and just pure evil. So I don't do those. I do prenups. I do adoptions. I really do like talking about prenups because I think there's like an element of marriage counseling when you enter into a prenup. And so that's like my ministry. So I really like it.
I love that you put it that way, Kelly, because I do think I am pro prenup, just to state that up front. I'm not a lawyer. And I should state right up front, and you can add to this, we are not giving legal advice. Kelly is an attorney. She's in California, if I remember correctly. But we're just talking in generalities, and this is for information purposes. She's not giving legal
Thank you.
advice. Is that the best way to put it?
Yes, it is.
Okay,
And I
perfect.
also want to make an edit. I'm not really pro prenup. I'm
Okay,
pro marriage.
there you
So
go.
I think that's a very important distinction. I think
Absolutely
prenups are good, but I'm pro marriage. So I
excellent.
am anti-divorce, just like I'm anti-abortion. And so that's what I have to say at the outset.
Thank you for saying that. All right, let's get
You're
into
welcome.
it. What exactly is a prenup? Because a lot of people, especially people that reach out to me, and again, I'm not a lawyer, they don't really understand what a prenup actually is. There's a lot of misconceptions. So can you just give us like an overview of what one is?
Sure. So I think the easiest way to put it is a prenuptial agreement is an agreement that you have with your to-be spouse about what happens in the event that the marriage doesn't work out. So it is a contract that you sign disposing of your assets in the event of a divorce or death.
So in general, it's to protect assets is the way to look at it. And I'm wondering, does it also take into account things like potential liabilities? Because one of the things that someone asked me recently as well, if I get a prenup, and I forget their exact situation, but one of them, and I don't remember which one it was, had a large liability, and
Right.
they were saying,
Yes, it
should I get
does.
a prenup to protect myself so that in the event we get divorced, I'm not then responsible for that liability? Would that be correct?
No, that's incorrect. If
Okay,
it's your
see?
liability, you can't protect yourself from your
No, I
liability.
mean,
You
like
can
if
only
you,
protect yourself from the other side's
that's what I meant.
liability.
That's what I meant. Maybe I
Right.
misspoke
Okay.
on that. Yeah.
So if you have a business that you tend to get sued a lot on, then it would be wise for the person entering into the marriage to sign a prenup saying that's your business. If you get sued on it, I'm not responsible, and neither is the community.
That's an important distinction that I think a lot of people don't really understand, as I said. So now that we kind of have a better understanding of what prenups are,
Mhm.
just a quick overview. why would you want to get one? What are the pros? Maybe some of the cons as well.
Well, I think in this world now, there's a huge incidence of divorce, which is very sad. People don't understand the purpose of marriage. People don't understand that God created marriage and it's never supposed to end. And so I think it's really important that if you are entering into a marriage, um, that you be able to protect your assets in case it doesn't work out, because there's a huge probability it won't work out just because of the way that marriage is treated in the media and the way that marriage is treated in this world.
Mm.
It's likely that it's not going to work out. And I hate to sound like such like a bad, like a Debbie Downer, but
A naysayer, so to speak, right?
right. But that is the truth. Unless you both have a clear view of God's design and God's purpose for you, and it's both, not just you, then it's likely that your marriage is going to end in divorce.
Yeah, I mean, the last statistics that I saw, and again, they change all the time, but the last numbers I saw were somewhere around 55% of all marriages are ending in divorce. So it is prudent to protect yourself and to be honest with you, protect your potential spouse. At least I feel.
Correct.
There's a lot of, and I wanted to ask you about this. There's a lot of belief out there that even bringing the subject up, broaching the subject, is going to create friction. And my argument is always, if you're not comfortable talking about this at least, or potentially looking into it, maybe you shouldn't be getting married, because it's a pretty responsible thing to do. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it depends as to why you're entering into the marriage. So if you don't understand that this is like a lifetime commitment and maybe you're in it because you don't want to be lonely, it's free sex, I don't know, somebody's supporting you, these are horrible reasons to get into a marriage. So if
Mm-hmm.
you're entering into a marriage for any of those selfish reasons, then you definitely need a prenup because your marriage isn't going to work out, hands down. But if you're entering into the marriage and you're selfless and the other person's selfless and you guys have Christ as the center, then it's probably going to work out. And so you probably don't need to talk about a prenup. You know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
I think it depends why. And I don't advertise prenups in godly marriages because godly marriages are not going to fail.
Mm-hmm.
But in a godless marriage, and that's any marriage that's based on self, it is going to fail. And so if you're going to if you're a selfish person and you're always, if you're selfish, you need a prenup. Okay. And I think all of us are selfish, but some of us know and recognize that and try to work on it. So I know I'm talking in like, it's, it's just difficult for me to advertise prenups to everyone because I think definitely there's people that are willing to work on the marriage. And so in that case, I would say don't get a prenup because it's just going to bring up a lot of sore points.
I have to say I appreciate you saying that. I really do, because you know, and not to knock lawyers at all, but there's a lot of lawyers that would say you have to get one. I mean, they're trying to generate money. Let's be honest. um,
There's lawyers out there advertising divorce. Life is
exactly,
short, get a divorce.
exactly.
I find that extremely obnoxious and noxious. Actually, like the most abhorrent thing I've ever seen on the market is people saying life is short, get a divorce. Like, quite honestly, I retired after 25 years because I don't want to die a divorce lawyer. I don't think that there could be anything worse than being a divorce lawyer. So,
It is
that's
so
what I have to
refreshing to
say
hear
about
you
that.
say that.
It's terrible.
It.
You're profiting off broken families. And this is something that God created. In this world, you're going to have trouble, right?
Absolutely.
Jesus said that in John 16:33. But he gives us things in this world that are beautiful, that we get to live here and enjoy. And family is one of them. And now Satan is out there destroying families, marriages, anything good. And, it's like as a divorce lawyer, you're partaking in what Satan is out to seek. It says Satan seeks to steal, kill, and destroy. That's John 10:10. And he's out there destroying families. So if you're part of this destruction, you definitely need a prenup. Because even if you're not the party that's destroying, you're marrying somebody that is destroying the marriage. So
Yeah, I mean, it's. I agree with everything you're saying, just for the record. But I just find it fascinating that in today's society, there's a lot of people that do view marriage as disposable, right? For the reasons you talked about, right? They go into it for selfish reasons, or they're lonely. That's the worst reason ever to get married, in my opinion. That type of thing. So having a prenup is a prudent idea, potentially, right? Like you said, it's not
Mhm.
nothing is cut and dried in life, nor in the law. So, to say absolutely you need one or absolutely you don't, and that's something my followers. It's amazing, Kelly, because there's this one side of them that say you should never get one. There's the one side that says you should always get one. And I'm like, guys, it goes both ways. It depends on the situation. So it's
It does, because you can say you're going into it in the right way, but you don't know if they are.
right.
And so, I just saw this video on TikTok or whatever, and it was like if marriage vows were being honest. And it was the girl saying, well, I take you as husband because I'm tired of being lonely. And, you know, people
That
keep running away from me and you're just the best I can do. And then the guy is saying, well, you're like the best I can do because all the other models don't want to date me and you're fat so you're never going to leave me. And it's just so sad that people are taking marital vows because they have no idea what God created marriage for and they're just entering into it just to settle down and it's going to be done just like that, you know?
yep, I do know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
that's why I would say if you are entering into a marriage in this day and age, you should probably get a prenup because you don't know the other person. And we're not living in the same times that we were in the 1980s,
mhm.
There was a time that marriage was valued, God was valued, and now we're heading into a society where it's okay to have after school Satan club, where women celebrate murdering their babies, and where men celebrate having disposable sex. Like, I have 1,000 women. It's stupid.
It
It's stupid, it's dumb, and it's never going
yeah.
to work out if you enter into a marriage with a party that thinks like that or is influenced by these evil factors out there.
So,
So,
you know, knowing all that, and let's say we're a hypothetical couple, and we're having the conversation about getting a prenup. What are some of the things that you would say if someone came into your office and said, or maybe a couple did and said, we're thinking about a prenup. We want to know what would typically go into one. What should we be thinking about? What should we consider? Again, we're not trying to give legal advice here, but just in general, what would you say should be the things to think about if you're going to enter into a prenup?
so just a point of clarification, it would never be a couple entering my office
Okay.
because if one side is getting a prenup, then the other side is in direct conflict of the professional responsibility rules. You cannot ever represent both sides of the V, husband v wife. So a prenup is only going to come out when you're suing each other. So I can never represent both. So I can do it in a mediation. So if a couple comes into my office, and I just had one last week where they both want a prenup, I can sit them down and we can mediate the prenup. So in that situation, I'm functioning as a mediator, a neutral. I don't represent husband or wife. And so I'm just there to talk to them about the basics.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the point of clarification. So if they come in and I'm the mediator, I would say, here's the law in California. We're one of 9 states that have community property. And it basically says all assets and debts acquired during the marriage before the date of separation is community. So that includes liabilities. Um, and then I say that is the default. So everything you accumulate during the marriage, that's the default if you don't have a prenup. Now, most people want to change the default. So they want the default to say everything is separate, except the things that we make community. And so I think there's this misnomer that if you get a prenup, everything is separate. That is not true. All you're doing is changing the default to separate, but you can most definitely have something in the prenup that says these are the things that we want for community. So you can still have community in a prenup, but that becomes something that you must choose instead of the default.
So, in a state like California where there's community property, is it different than a state that doesn't have community property, or is it
I
the
would say so, yeah,
yeah,
because
okay.
I think other states or what they call equitable apportionment. And so that is more like dependent on the circumstances.
But would you say this is? I'm so glad that you're on sharing this information because these are the things that my followers are often asking about. So if
So I'll
that,
give you an example.
oh, beautiful. Go
Let's
ahead.
say, okay, so let's say you enter into a 5 day marriage, okay, 5 days. And when you guys came into the marriage, you didn't have anything. But on day 3 of the marriage, you hit the Powerball. Okay, so this person that has spent, let's say he bought the ticket before the marriage. Okay, this is a very wacko example, but that's
Mhm.
what family law examples are. So let's say husband is a gambler. The day before the marriage, he buys a Powerball ticket. Okay, with his money, he spent like $10,000 on tickets. Okay, he gets married the next day. Now the drawing is the day 2 of the marriage. He wins $1 billion. Okay, from the $10,000 tickets that he bought. Okay, so now California law is community property. So, he's going to hire a lawyer who's going to say the money came from his separate asset. So it's all his. But then the wife's lawyer is going to say, well, this money was accumulated because the drawing happened during the marriage. Therefore, the billion, half of it is hers. Okay. So let's say it's like a 3 day marriage, 3 day marriage. So in California, it's likely he's going to have to part with half that ticket. In other states that are equitable apportionment, they look more to the circumstances.
Aha.
And so in other states, he would have a better likelihood of arguing this is what I used to do before the marriage. I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars gambling and I finally won in day 2 of the marriage. So in those equitable apportionment states, the courts would likely rule this ticket is all his. So I think equitable apportionment states, the judges have more work to do because they have to examine each fact scenario. But I think sometimes they can reach more equitable rulings, which is more fair. In states that are community property, there's a bright line rule, and therefore there's circumstances that make it very harsh to apply and others that are fair. So I think it really depends.
That is such valuable information, and I guess the takeaway I would have from that is if you find yourself in a situation like that, good for you, by the way, to win $1 billion. But
Exactly. A
go
billion
find a
dollars.
go find a lawyer in your state because every state's law is going to be different, and that's a very
That's
key point.
exactly
Yeah.
right.
So when you're doing a prenup, let's say you're representing a client. Um, can you kind of talk about the process of how it goes? Because there's this belief out there that it can be very adversarial. And I don't think that that's the case, but I could be wrong. I like you said earlier, and that's another great point you made is you can't represent both parties. Each party has to have
Mm.
their own attorney. And knowing that the legal system in general is adversarial, there's this belief that a lot of people have that it creates so much friction that we should never go into it because we'll never get married then. But the reality, I don't think, is along those lines. It could be, absolutely. But do you find that there's a lot of friction that involved with it? Or do you think both?
Yeah, there's definitely friction.
A
If one
lot,
person
though?
doesn't want, oh, yeah. If a
Really?
person
Okay.
doesn't want a prenup and the other side is pushing it on them, that's absolutely adversarial.
Wow.
So I think only in situations where both parties want the prenup would it be okay. But yeah, if you're getting married and you think that this marriage is going to last forever and the other side is let's get a prenup, of course you're going to be offended and of course you're going to
Right.
be outraged and of course it's going to be adversarial. That's the nature of the
Of the
thing,
beast, right? Yeah. It's
Yeah.
it's just funny to me because, as I sit here, I'm like, in a matter of speaking, stunned about it because I'm like, if you've gotten to the point where you're about to get married and dedicate yourself to that other person for the rest of your life, because that's what marriage should be, and it's all going to unravel because you're trying to protect each other. To me, that I could see where there might be points of contention for sure, but for it to become so adversarial, I wonder, does it end up breaking up potential marriages ahead of time, which would probably be a
Yeah,
good
of
thing,
course
I
it does.
guess, right?
Well, it's good and it's bad, but like I think definitely if you are, I mean, sometimes couples come in and there's no reason they should get a prenup except for the fact that they heard it on the radio.
Mm.
So, in that situation, if one party is like, no, I don't want to get a prenup, then it's going to be horrible. So I think only in situations where there's two business savvy spouses. So maybe both of them run their own business
Hmm.
and they understand that they can get sued, et cetera, and they're both equally savvy. Then it's a situation where I think if one side wants it, it's going to cause a lot of
Cause
problems.
friction.
And I definitely had maybe at least two or three clients, sets of clients that decided they don't want to get married because the prenup process was so
Maybe,
grueling.
yeah, maybe that was a good thing. Who knows, right? I mean, but
Yeah.
although you might feel bad that that happened, but I could see both sides of it. You just touched on something I was going to ask you about because another, I'm bringing up the misconceptions because these are the things that my followers asked me to ask you. Okay, another common one that people have mentioned to me is prenups are only for the rich. You know, the celebrities, the rock stars, those type of things. And you kind of just touched on it. You know, if somebody doesn't have a lot of wealth, maybe it's not a good idea. How do you, like you said, if you own businesses, it's a good idea. How do you address that someone that would say, well, those are only for the rich, or the other side of it, like you said, everyone, those that consider everyone should get one. Is there like a cutoff you would say, or just a general guideline you would give?
I mean, I would say if one party is hesitant, then you should probably go into premarital counseling and kind of figure out why you're getting a prenup. And so if the party that wants a prenup owns a business, that's easy to explain. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, well, I own a business, and in a divorce, the business will be valued. And see, that's a game that people play in divorce that they don't understand. So, for example, I have my own law firm. Okay. So to me, I run the law firm. Without me, it's worthless.
Mm-hmm.
But in the event of a divorce, I'm going to have, like, if the other side, my husband, doesn't agree to my assessment of the value of my firm, he could hire forensic accountants and they'll go through my books and they'll say 1 year she made $1 million. So her firm is worth 1 million, even though I've had years where my firm had lost money.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just one of those throwing the dice games where it's like you're at the mercy of somebody to tell you what your business is worth. And you know that the business without you is not worth anything because you run the business. So
Right.
it's just a very unfair result. And so I think for people that own their own businesses, it's a must to get a prenup. But if you're a W-2, you work for somebody and you get paychecks, and on the pay stubs it indicates how much you make, that's easy. You don't need a prenup because in the divorce you can just put your numbers in the Master and figure out how much support you're paying. That's it. That's it. But if you own your own business, then it's kind of like, it's confusing how much it's worth. And that's going to be an asset to be divided in the divorce. So
Yeah.
anytime you have assets that are not easy to divide in a divorce, you should get a prenup.
Would you also say that if you have a situation where, like, I'm just trying to come up with a hypothetical. Let's say you're marrying someone whose family has assets, or let's say a home, like a grandmother's home that you want to pass, that the grandmother wanted to pass down to the child, or something like that. That could be protected in a prenup, and that might be a reason to look at something like that. Because otherwise,
Well,
if you
here's the
marry,
thing
it
that a lot of
becomes.
people
Go ahead.
don't know
Okay.
is that if your grandmother owns a house free and clear and she gives it to you during the marriage, that's still your separate property. That it's not an issue because it's a gift that's paid off that she gifts to you. So even without a prenup, it's still your separate property. The issue arises if there's still a mortgage. So basically, if you have a grandma that has like $1 million house and there's still half a million mortgage, she dies and she gifts it to you. Then when you use money earned during the marriage to pay down that mortgage, then it becomes somewhat community. So the only issue is if you have an asset that's not paid off, that's given to you. But if you have an inheritance that's fully paid off and it was gifted to you during the marriage without a prenup, it still stays separate. So again, you have to examine the issues to determine if you even need a prenup.
Those, see, again, great information. I thank you so much for coming on, because you're actually educating me, and I know you're helping my followers. Um, so,
Uh,
so Kelly, when you look at these situations, and you get to the point where you're going to go through a divorce, and you're going into family court, or
mhm.
or Supreme Court. And I'm originally from New York State. It was called Supreme Court there. That's where the divorces were handled. A common thing that I am often hearing from people is that Well, prenups are the be all end all and it solves all the problems in divorce. It doesn't. Or that they're worthless and they don't accomplish anything, which is not true also. I guess my question is how how legally binding are there, and is there a time limit? And I guess this might be state specific, but in general, is there are there time limits? Because someone said to me, "Well, after 10 years, the prenups are void," and I don't know
And
what
that's
state
not
they were
true.
in, and I didn't think that was
So
true.
basically,
Yeah.
you can, those are called sunset clauses. That's
Okay.
when you agree that the sun is going to set on your prenup. So after 5, 10 years, it's no longer good. I don't recommend them. I think it's really stupid to pay for a prenup and say it expires in 10 years. So I don't believe in sunset clauses.
Hmm.
Um, because the truth is, if you have a prenup and you stay married forever, you never take it out. So why even put a expiration date on it? Right? It's like the life insurance policy that expires the day before you die. It's like, no,
Yeah.
don't buy anything that expires because you're paying for it not to expire.
Hmm.
So it doesn't automatically expire if you don't make it that way. You can definitely make it that way, but I advise against it. So that's what's your
So
second question?
yeah,
Sorry.
no, that's fine because so the person that was relaying that might have had a situation, or the situation they were looking at might have been one where it was sunsetting, I think is the term you use. So after if they put in that it's going to expire in 10 years, well then it expires in 10 years and the judge is going to look
Right.
at that and say that doesn't apply. But in general, generally speaking, if there's no sunsetting clause, they're in perpetuity for life.
Correct.
Now, are
I
there
think Chris Rock had a sunset clause and it expired, I think, in like 10 years. And then his wife divorced him at 12 years.
maybe that was the
So,
case the guy was referring to? Who
yeah.
knows? I mean,
Yeah, Chris Rock,
it
don't
could
get
be.
sunset clauses. It's
It's
pointless. And all it does is encourage divorce the year
well,
after
yeah.
it expires.
You just beat me to my point I was about to make. Is you're
Hmm.
just setting yourself up for a divorce doing that. It's interesting. Now, are there other? Because again, these are the questions that many people have.
Interestingly enough, you can't have a clause in your prenup that's promotive of divorce. So here's an
What
example.
does that
If you
mean?
have a
Yeah.
clause, so if you have a clause in your prenup that says, after 5 years of marriage, um, I will give you $10 million, dollars, then arguably that's promotive of divorce because it encourages you to file for divorce after you get the $5 million. Dollars. So, I
Hmm.
don't, there's a lot of things that can be construed to be promotive of divorce, but definitely I would argue a sunset clause is promotive of divorce because anytime you have a legal document that has a natural expiration date, then you're going to wait until the expiration date to do what's now legal, and you're not bound to a
Right.
contract.
Right. Well,
So,
it's
yeah.
funny you say that because as you were talking about it, I'm like, I remember seeing it was a TV show or a movie a few years ago where they, after 5 years you get, let's say, 5 million. After 10 years you got 10 million. So that wouldn't actually be the case.
Well, if you kind of have like laddering payments, that
Hmm.
wouldn't be construed because the longer you get, you're still getting paid for each step of the ladder, right? So it's not like this
Okay.
cumulative 5 million after five. If you're miserable for 5 years, you probably would stay in the marriage if you knew that at year five you get 5 million. Whereas in years one, two, three, four, you got nothing. So but if you're getting like some payments per year, it might be worth your misery to snuff it out because you got at least a couple payments. So I mean, I see it either way.
Yeah, it's
It's difficult because it really hurts my heart to talk about marriage as like a transaction
right.
because I know that it's not.
And
And so I
unfortunately,
think,
they become that, right? It's become
yeah,
transactional.
and I think it even bothers me to talk about it as a transaction, even talking to you,
Right.
because I feel like, my words it could be construed the wrong way. And so I want, I guess, the listeners to take away the most important point, which is to marry wisely and to just don't throw it away, because at the end of the day, if you go through a nasty divorce and you lose all your wealth, it's just your wealth, it's not
Hmm.
a lifetime partner.
Hmm.
So I, I also think after 25 years of divorce cases, the one wisdom I can impart to you is that the people fighting in these cases aren't really fighting over money. They're fighting over the loss of trust. They're fighting over the loss of love, and nothing can compensate that. And so that's why it's like you have people that are fighting and it seems like they're greedy, but actually they're fighting what is in here.
Right.
They're
Yeah.
hurting.
They're
Yeah. And
they're
so
fighting
the
based
prenup
on
can protect
emotion.
your money.
Yeah, they're fighting
Yeah.
based on emotion, not on logic.
No. So at the end of the day, the prenup is just going to protect your money, but it doesn't protect what is more important, which is what's in here. So
Mhm.
I just caution your listeners, to just really, really um, just read the Bible and read and pray that God brings you a faithful spouse and God makes you into the spouse that He designed you to be, and that you don't need to resort to these man made laws because family laws are all broken. Okay, family was never supposed to be broken. You never should have children growing up in two homes and the parents are fighting. Just, it should never be that way. It's one of the most beautiful things that you can enjoy in this earth is family,
Mhm.
and so people that lose their spouse or their children, they're fighting with money, but that is not an adequate currency to compensate them for their loss, which is like love and family and all the good things you
Yeah,
get to enjoy in this
the
world.
money can never replace that. And that's what they're
Never.
trying to do, is replace that loss with money, and they'll battle for years and spend in six figures is not uncommon.
Way more. Way more.
And in the end, nobody wins. They may think they won, but they didn't win. Nobody wins, and
Everybody loses.
everybody
And
loses, especially if there's children involved. And that my
yeah,
one of the arguments I always make to people is the mistake I see more often than not here in 2024 is people rush to get married. Take your time, slow down, get to know the person. If you're trying to marry someone 6 weeks after you met them, I'm sorry, but I'm gonna say you're crazy, because you can't
well,
know
I
the
kind of
person.
disagree with that because
Okay,
I
go
met and
ahead.
married my husband. So I met and married my husband in 2.5 weeks. And
Wow.
so we're
So
still married after
you're
17
the
years.
proof that shows me I'm wrong. I love it.
Right. So I don't think that it's not, I just don't know if it's like the time that you know each other, because look
Interesting.
at Adam
Okay.
and Eve. Like God created Adam and Eve and they were married, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's like, I think if you both understand what God's design and God's plan for you is, it doesn't matter how long the courtship phase is.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're not working pursuant to God's plan and you're relying on your faulty man made ideas, then yeah, you should probably take some time to figure out what this person you're marrying is like. But like I said, I met and married my spouse 3 weeks
That's
and we're
I
happily married
love
in 20
hearing that.
years.
I love hearing
And
it.
I don't foresee that, it'll ever end
That is
because it's just, we both understand what it's about and
that
it's
may
not about what the
that makes
media
me
says
feel
it's
good,
about.
Kelly. That really does make me feel good,
Well,
because
good, because that should counteract the prenup bad
yeah,
feelings. I hate talking about
I
family
know,
law.
but it's
I
important.
teach it because I
Yeah,
love teaching it, but
yeah,
I hate doing it because it's broken families and
yeah.
it just
It's
breaks my heart.
and they're
I don't even
difficult
want to talk to
conversations.
people.
Yeah, they're difficult
Yeah,
conversations because there's nothing good about it, really.
nothing.
But
It's like they're talking about going to court and saving their bank accounts, and all I want to do is just embrace them because they
mhm,
just have a loss of love, a loss of what
right,
God gave them.
right.
And so it's like nothing can compensate. And that's why at some point I was like, I just can't do this anymore. I had to walk away from an extremely lucrative career,
I
So
don't. I'll be honest with you. I don't know how attorneys stay in it as long as some of them do, because it's got to be grinding. And I've had other attorneys on the show, and some of them have alluded to just how exhausting it is, because it's
I don't
all
know
you're
one
doing is
happy family lawyer.
yeah, there it's
I don't know one family lawyer that if they had hit the Powerball would say I would continue to
yeah.
be a divorce lawyer. Nobody says that.
I forget
They're
which
all
one it
doing it
was.
out of necessity
Yeah, but one of them said to me, I forget which one it was, said that it's you're wallowing in negativity like your whole
all
life.
day.
Because even when you go home or on the weekends, if you got a case, it might be in the back of your mind, or just in general. You leave the courtroom and you're exhausted mentally, emotionally, physically. It's got to be tough. Kelly, we got only a few more minutes because I know you do have to go. A couple other questions I want to ask real quick. Just these are things that people asked me to ask you. Is what would be some of the reasons that a judge might throw a prenup out, like for example, or change the terms? And one of the things I know about is if you start commingling funds. Can you talk a little bit about how you can, I guess the way I'll put it is how you could void a prenup, I guess is the way I would
So
put
I
it.
think I should clarify this misconception that judges are so interested in your life. They're not.
No,
No
they're
judge
not.
cares about your life.
Right.
Okay. So that's like the number one misconception is that people are like, the judge is just going to toss out the prenup. No, the judge doesn't do that. The prenup won't be before the judge unless one of you puts it before the judge. And so the question isn't, is the judge going to throw it out? The question should be, is your spouse going to challenge this prenup?
Mm.
Because that's the only time that the judge will see the prenup because judges don't care about your life. Okay. Picture yourself as a family law judge. Okay. By 10 a.m., you have heard 50,000 stories about how some spouse is a deadbeat and says how some spouse is a slut. By 10 a.m., okay, the judge is already over it.
Yep.
So judges don't care. They are not going to look at your prenup unless the other side brings it up. So I would say if you're going to enter into a prenup with a person that's always dickering over things, then be very careful. But most people don't look at documents. They sign tax returns without looking at it. And those are the types of people that you don't really have to worry about because, well, actually, no, because those types of people can hire attorneys that do that. But the point is, usually if you sign something, most normal people aren't going to challenge something that they signed. Okay, so that's the main idea of getting a prenup is that the act of getting it will discourage somebody later to come back and say, I didn't agree to that. Because once somebody puts their signature, it's presumed they agree to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so the beauty of a prenup and what you're actually paying for is the idea that the other person knew what you guys agreed on and it's in writing.
And it's very
It
important.
takes a real deranged person to challenge something that they signed.
Unfortunately, some do, right?
They do because they basically hire lawyers and the lawyers convince them to challenge it because they get to challenge it and get money whether they win or not.
Yeah, the lawyers get the money
So as a
either
lawyer,
way.
yeah, because they'll be
so
like, yeah, I'll take
refreshing.
50,000 to challenge your prenup. Whether I win or not, I get the 50,000. And so then the person's like, sure.
Can I say thank you again for being so honest and forthright? Because I love having an attorney on who's just being honest about it, right? A lot of attorneys wouldn't admit
Yeah.
they're in it for the money, and you're the exact opposite of that. And I appreciate you for that. But one thing that I do
I'm
know,
called to speak truth.
one of the things
So
that
I
I am
speak truth
aware
in
of,
love.
there was a case where there was a prenup in place. Um, without getting too specific on it, he had some money in the bank. They signed a prenup to protect that money, but then he took that money out and used it to buy a house. It was their down payment on a house. Now, the question is does that now become commingling, right? Community property. Sorry, I've lost the term there. Is that a way that might void, say, a prenup if you do something like that, where you have a certain amount of money? Let's say you take 100,000 out, you protect it in the prenup. It's his or hers or whomever, and then you take it out and you buy a marital asset with it. What happens in that case in general?
Well, your prenup should specify there's no marital asset unless you make it that way.
Okay.
And so it would clarify that. So I would think that the only way that would be confusing and you're commingling is if you don't have a prenup. But you can definitely put in your prenup, everything is separated. And if we buy something, we have to make a community in order for it to be community.
Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't automatically be. So if you have a prenup, you wouldn't run into that confusing situation. You would only run into that if you don't have a prenup.
Or if you had a really bad lawyer write it up, I guess, right? I mean,
right. Or if you have a bad lawyer. Now, there are certain instances where your actions could directly contradict the prenup. And I actually put a clause in my prenup that says, as much as possible, our actions are going to mirror what we agreed to in the prenup, because otherwise, but in the prenup, I'll say failure to do so does not void the prenup. So, that's kind of like a safety net.
Right.
You should always do things that are consistent with your prenup. But if it doesn't, like filing joint tax returns or something, even though your prenup says you have to file separate, I do have a clause that says even if we accidentally file, or even deliberately file tax returns jointly,
mm-hmm.
because we want to take advantage of the joint laws, it doesn't mean that we're trying to commingle.
Gotcha. All right, our time is running short. I do have one final question I want to ask you real quick, which is if you're considering getting married and you want to get a prenup, how do you find a good lawyer? what's the best way to find a lawyer? And then the second part of it, and I already know what you're going to say, but I want to get your answer, is should you use one of those templates that are available online?
So how do you find a lawyer? Um, I would say, I don't know, go on the internet
Okay.
and ask your friends and family,
Hmm.
um, and then maybe research lawyers, read their bio, read their blogs, figure out what their belief system is. And then the second part, what's your second part?
The second part was, yeah, it was,
Don't ever use a template.
I mean, I mean, just for laughs, before you came on, I Googled, getting a prenup, and I think it was LegalZoom has them, and there's a few other ones, and I'm like, I can't even believe they have that available. To do that without an attorney, I'm just going to
I
say,
mean, you can use a template, but attorneys aren't really charging you for the templates. They're charging you for their signature. So it's kind of like you can do your own nose job, right? But it's kind of like I cut off my nose and then I'm going to go to a surgeon and be like, can you sign off on this nose job that I did myself? No attorney's going to do it. So, like a lot of people, I always give that same example. They'll come to me and they'll say, hey, I did my own prenup. Can you sign it? I'm like, no, that's like you doing your own reconstructive surgery and you want me to sign off on it because you're not paying for the surgery, you're paying for the liability.
mm,
And so usually when they come to me with a template, I'm like, rip up.
yeah,
I charge you for mine and the liability that my signature carries. So, it's
yeah,
like that's what you're paying for is my liability, the signature, my malpractice premiums, and the fact that, I'm a lawyer.
you
You
got,
get a template, you can go sue yourself, but you can sue me. And that's why I charge for that.
you're paying for the expertise and making sure that it's done right,
Correct.
not done cheaply, is the way I
Exactly.
would phrase it.
Otherwise, go get your own reconstructive surgery.
Yeah.
And see if a surgeon will sign up on the botch job you did to your nose.
All right, Kelly, I know we do have to wrap up because you have a busy schedule. Any final thoughts that you want to share with the audience on the topic?
No, just, there's the fruit of the spirits and just you always have to have love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And these are the fruit that grow within a marriage, spiritual fruit. It's not of the flesh. And these are the only things that you can abide by to guarantee that your marriage is secure. But the problem is you can do this and the other person doesn't and it still falls apart. But if both people exemplify the fruit of the spirit, there will never be a divorce and you will have your legacy be carried on generation after generation and not be stopped. So that's all I have to say. And pick up your Bible. That good book has more advice than any silly man lawyer can give you.
Kelly, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to come on and help teach people the realities of prenups, the good, the bad, and really things to think about if you should get one or, before things to think about before you enter into marriage. I appreciate it so much. And
I have one more thing to say.
Go.
And it's a good way to end our podcast.
Great. Go ahead.
My tagline is marriage is grand, divorce 100 grand. And that is absolutely true.
I love that.
I have handled so few divorces under $100,000. Most of the divorces I used to handle in my 25 career exceeded $100,000, and some have exceeded millions of dollars. So,
wow. Hopefully you trademark
keep your money
that.
safe. Work on your marriage.
Put it on a shirt.
I do have a trademark.
There you go.
Marriage is grand. Divorce 100 grand is trademarked to me.
Good for you. Again, Kelly, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Dan. It was wonderful, and peace be with you. Talk to you later.
All right.
Bye.
All right, everyone. What a great show, right? So one of the things that a lot of you have reached out to me about was prenups, and that's why I wanted to have Kelly on, because she's very humble, but she is an expert on them. And it's really good to have a better understanding of what they are, how they can protect you, how they might not, and things to think about. As I said during the show, I am very much pro prenup, but I also understand there may be situations where you don't need one. Each case is individual. Each couple should consider it and weigh it together. My personal belief is if you're going to enter in a marriage, you should at least have the discussion. Doesn't mean you have to get one. And if you do decide to get one, you do want to get competent legal representation. I'm not giving legal advice, but there's no way I would ever recommend using any of those templates because having used or seen them in other areas separate from this, a lot of times there's a lot of issues with them. On that note, hey, if you've enjoyed the show, do me a favor, give me that thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. I have many other topics that I'm going to be covering in the very near future, bringing on experts like Kelly to talk about things in family law or other issues that men and boys face. So if you hit that subscribe and click the notification, you'll be notified when the show goes up. New podcasts do go up every Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern. And by the way, I'm also live on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter, aka X, every Wednesday from 4 to 5:30. You're welcome to join me. My co-host is Lindsay. We call it Boy Meets Squirrel because she goes by Squirrely Girl. And we talk about topics such as this, but more from a layman's perspective as opposed to an expert. So come join us there as well. Okay. Thank you for watching this show. We'll see you next time on Men Need to Be Heard.